But first, we kick things off with that recovery in air travel. A TSA data showing daily air travelers in the U.S. hit a new record since the pandemic over the weekend, just a little shy of about 20% off those 2019 pre-pandemic travel levels. But airlines have been scrambling to catch up to a full return here, boosting efforts to hire pilots, mechanics, and flight attendants, but struggling to do so. Some major airliners have even had to cancel flights as a result. We saw that with American Airlines, the first to make those announcements. And for more on that, I want to bring on our first guest in the noon hour. Sara Nelson, Association of Flight Attendants-CWA President, joins us right now. Sara, good to be chatting with you again. I remember you kind of making the point that this was going to be important when we were dealing with the pandemic because it's always harder to bring staff back. You didn't want to see those massive layoffs because of this exact problem. So talk to me about what you're seeing right now as airlines are trying to work to get back to normal.
Well, Zach, this is exactly what we talked about. One of the issues that we talked about when we were talking COVID relief was the payroll support program under aviation, which kept people in their jobs connected to their certifications that are so necessary to do this work. So we did have a lapse from October 1st to the end of December. And what you're seeing now is a result of getting people back to work, even from that leg back then. If we had not had the payroll support program in the first place back in March of 2020, or the emergency relief to get people starting to get people recalled in December of 2020, and then in the relief plan, that Biden's relief plan that we got in place in February, we would be in a much worse place right now. So this is actually putting a fine point on what we were saying, that if you don't keep airline employees connected to their jobs, we have a bigger problem because you have to go back to more safety training. You have to go back through your security credentials, and it just takes time. And that's what we're seeing right now. So we can all be glad that it's not a lot worse.
Sara, you could argue that some people are watching this play out a little confused because when you think about the bailout, the rescue money that went to airlines initially, the argument from executives was that they needed the money to be able to keep the staff in place so that when things started to ramp up, things would be a lot more smoother. Why are we seeing this sort of hiccup now when these airlines did take the money on the back of that explanation?
So remember, we said in August of 2020 that they needed to extend that program because we were not through the pandemic. The CARES Act, of course, was taking a guess at how long it would take us to get through the pandemic. The pandemic was still raging by the end of last summer and into the fall. And Congress allowed that to lapse. And what we said is you cannot retroactively restore people to their jobs. You can't retroactively restore them their lives or their homes that they may lose if they don't have these paychecks. And so Congress did allow that funding to lapse, and that's when the furloughs happened. And that is why we are seeing the result of those furloughs, because we said it takes time to get people back to work. Months, the flight attendants were all back as of this month, but mechanics, pilots, they're still getting retrained and still getting back on the job. So that is just the lapse in funding from October 1st to the end of December. As I said, it would be far, far worse if we had not had that relief in place and getting people recalled and then keeping them in their jobs this year.
Yeah, the other aspect, too, that we've been seeing more and more reports of is incidents on flights. And I suppose it hasn't necessarily been easygoing for flight attendants to even maintain their jobs during the pandemic, as those reports have risen. The FAA is saying that they're looking into normally they would look at 140 cases a year, and this year already about 400 by May. We talk about a lot of these being people who just don't want to wear masks on flights. But I mean, how important is that issue to really, I know there was a letter sent to the DOJ or really looking into kind of helping support flight attendants here in that battle with passengers. Talk to me about how stressful that is and what you're hearing from your union members.
Well, first of all, Zach, I want to be really clear that that 400 number is just one airline. So it's actually 3,000 by the end of May that FAA was reporting. So if we stay on that track, we're talking about more reports in this year of unruly passengers than we've had in the entire history of aviation. This is an incredibly stressful time. Everyone is at a stress level 10. And it's almost as if we have forgotten how to interact with each other. There is a basic level of kindness. And I have to tell you that many of these incidents are related to the masks, but the masks were politicized and they were at the heart of being a symbol of this idea that we're divided and at odds with each other. And so it's not really about the enforcement of the mask. There's a much deeper issue going on here about unfairness and complaints about what people have been through, and we have to really focus on how we're being kind to each other. Now, what the FAA has done since January 13th is they've put in place a zero tolerance policy for dealing with these events. So what they're saying is you don't get a second chance if you're acting out on an airplane and making things worse. It's a $35,000 fine and potential jail time if you're going to do that. And that has served as a deterrent in the past from these events taking place. We are starting to see those consequences being reported and having an effect. But it's a much bigger problem that we have to get our arms around. We need to pause alcohol sales for a period of time because alcohol is a major contributor to this. And I want to remind you, too, that we don't have all the airplanes back up in the air yet. So most of these aircraft are full. Flight attendants are trained in de-escalation, and one of those de-escalation tactics is actually to separate the conflict. But we don't have any room to be moving people right now. And so everybody is, again, at that stress level 10, and everybody needs a little help right now. And we're really calling on the public to recognize that we are giving you safety instructions. We're there for your safety and security. We tell you to buckle that seatbelt because we know that if you don't, you can be thrown to the ceiling of the airplane. And when you come down, you're going to hurt other people. It's the same with the mask for right now because not everyone on our planes can get vaccinated. And we're all in this space together. So it's just another safety instruction that we are required to give you. So we just need everybody to understand that and get along right now. It's really tough for flight attendants. And there's one other thing I would say. We have small planes up there in the air right now. And what that means is more regional flight attendants are doing that work, regional flight attendants and other employees. And those contracts are about 40% less. We have an issue right now at Piedmont Airlines, which is an American Eagle carrier, where flight attendants are having a problem just getting to work because it's costing them so much to come to work because there's fewer flights. So we need to resolve these issues. There are some things that they can do around the workforce issues that aren't necessarily related to payroll support, but are an issue right now because there's these inequities and jobs that are not providing enough for people to even come to work.
Sara, there's some who have argued that the FAA needs to go even further than some of these measures they've already introduced, which is to say that ban some of these passengers from flying, whether it's a 2-month ban, whether it's a year-long ban. Is that something that you would support?
Absolutely. We support that, and we believe there is pending legislation for that. There needs to be a coordinated effort across aviation. One thing I would say that's been really helpful is that lately there has been interagency working groups. We are communicating a lot better with government and the airlines and the unions, and having a consistent message to people and being very clear to travelers about what's expected of them. Oftentimes people get upset when they don't know what to expect and then things are abnormal. So having very clear instructions to people about what's expected of them, what the travel experience will be like, and the consequences if you're not following those rules helps to put everybody in a place of being able to follow the rules and understand why they need to do it. So being very clear about that prosecution and then a potential ban on your ability to even take a flight is another step that's really important right now because we have such a huge increase in these incidents and we've got to get it under control.
Yeah, it's a good point. A good reminder, too, that just kind of some of the common decency here lost in a lot of these interactions. But Sara Nelson, Association of Flight Attendants-CWA President, appreciate you taking the time here to chat with us today.